Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Side Stories.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. That time of year, I guess. It's approaching December 25th.
Yes, and that beautiful voice you hear is finally Darian. He's back.
Oh, yeah. I'm also back. It's been, a month and a half?
Something like that.
Long story short, I've been very busy. I started a new job about a month and a half ago, but I was also finishing up a previous job, so I was working quite a bit, just didn't really have a whole lot of time to do much of anything, let alone podcasts, so I'm back.
Yeah, don't worry. Darian's finally back. All is right in the world. Darian's on the podcast regularly again. Thank you to all our wonderful guests that we had on there. Jacob, Ryan, Casey. Love you all. Merry Christmas to all of you. Thank you for holding down the fort.
I appreciate you stepping in to help me out.
In his time of need, you were here for both me and Darian. You were too kind. We love you all. And we'll hopefully have all of you on the podcast again sometime. Hopefully in a bit more planned circumstances. Well, some of your episodes are more planned, some weren't. We'll figure it out. Anyways, getting to our episode topic today. Really quick, I'd like to dedicate this episode to, I'm not going to say the full name so that no one tries to sneak on there, but the CC Discord server. You know who you are if you understand that abbreviation. Thank you all for making my life more fun. This episode's a shout to you because I know you're going to love it. And today we are talking about, Darian, weird Christmas traditions from around the world. Because it's the Side Stories Christmas special. It's going to be great.
We have some pretty fun ones for you. Pretty excited.
Yeah, you sure sound like it. Jeez. So, Darian, it's okay to loosen up on this show. We talk about history. It doesn't mean you need to be all serious. You don't get to be all academic about it. We're fun.
I'm never serious.
I know. That's the surprising thing is that, like, off this show, Darian is, like, all nothing but jokes constantly, and he's great. And on this show, he's good, too, but he's so much more, like, stoic. I don't know how to get that wild Darian energy out on the microphone. I need to figure it out. I'm trying to crack this egg here.
I don't know if we want to release that. I've been spending a long time trying to bottle it up.
You just gotta let it all out.
Yeah, I got a nine-tailed fox inside of me.
God. Oh, don't start referencing that, you weeb. All right, anyways. Let's just jump right into the Christmas traditions here. So, I believe I'm going to start first. It's going to be me, you, because you got a longer one. That'll be me again. Right, okay. Good. We have successfully planned a podcast live on the podcast. All right. So, first Christmas tradition we're going to talk about. Darian, what do you know about Venezuelan Christmas?
I know it's a Latin American country, so I imagine it's majority Catholic.
Yes, it is.
So it's probably a Catholic-esque Christmas.
You're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is they add something that makes it wholly unique on top of it.
What's that?
You know what that is? Roller skating.
Roller skating. Okay.
Yes.
Wouldn't imagine that.
So, for whatever reason, way back in the day, I believe at least the story that I've heard, the reason for this is in the 1950s, Venezuela had a strong anti-communist government, which is a little ironic given its current government system right now. Back in the day, it had a very close relationship to the U.S., and in the 1950s, the United States was going through what was called the golden age of roller skating. Yes, that's the actual term, where there's a ton of skate rinks everywhere, and a lot of people roller skate as a hobby and like a physical activity, and that made its way down to Venezuela, so there was a very strong Catholic tradition of going to Mass, especially early in the morning. I believe the nickname is the Cockerel's Mass, because that's, when the rooster crows. It's like 5 or 6 a.m. when the sun's coming up in the middle of December, and that's when you go to, like, Christmas Mass, and you do it with your whole family, and it's a big thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what got added to that is that people started roller skating to Mass at that time in the early mornings. So this became a very interesting mix of Venezuelan culture, Catholicism, and the American love for roller skating. And it's gone on until this day. So the main thing, at least from what I understand from people who have celebrated, reading their accounts of it online, typically some people celebrate the full, like, it's kind of like a 9-day countdown to Christmas there, I guess. And that has partially to do with the liturgical calendar there, which is the calendar the church uses, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I always have trouble pronouncing that word. It's so hard. But anyways.
It's a big word.
It is. It's a big, complicated word for a big, complicated calendar. It's shaped like a wheel. It's great. Look it up sometime. But anyways, so during the countdown to Christmas, you got these 9 days of partying, and a lot of people roller skate during that time, right? And they sing big traditional Catholic songs, and everyone's out there in their whole festive garb. A lot of people dress up as kind of like Santa or different religious figures. Everyone's like roller skating around now. It's a big party. Whereas for some people who maybe have to work a bit more, have like a family they got to look out for, might only do the roller skating on the weekends before Christmas. So it depends on where you're at and like what your situation is in the country. But for the most part, there's like about 9 days of celebration. And then when Christmas comes, after all those days and nights of roller skating around, everyone heads off to their churches. I'm assuming they take the roller skates off when they go into church, and then they celebrate Christmas Mass. And it's just their fun way of doing that. It's got a big kind of vibe to it. unfortunately, given the circumstances in Venezuela right now, which are quite dire in some cases, the tradition isn't dying, but it's becoming more dangerous to do because there's a lot of parts of the country that are not safe. There's a lot of gun crime and, just general violence and also, supply chain issues, which we're seeing globally right now, but especially pronounced in Venezuela. So there are safe places where you can still do this. This does still happen. But over the past about 15 years since the communist government's come to power, it has definitely been, the party's dampened a little bit from what I understand. So hopefully as Venezuela will eventually recover, hopefully sometime in the future, tradition will grow back up to what it was, because back a few decades ago it was massive, and it still is, but it's just not as safe to do as it used to, which is unfortunate. But they're keeping it alive.
Do you know how roller skating became popular in Venezuela?
I believe it was simply like American cultural exchange, where there's a lot of American influence during that time. Like they had a very strong, this was the early Cold War, so 1950s. So there was a military junta, and the United States was, cozying up to a lot of juntas in South America because they were staunchly anti-communist. So with a lot of American investment and cultural exchange, and I'm sure, American nationals visiting the country, eventually it just took hold. I tried to figure out what actually caused this to germinate, what the actual true first cause was. And it seems like nobody knows, which makes it kind of fun and mysterious that no one's exactly sure where this tradition came from exactly. But we know that going to mass early in the morning goes back, I believe, centuries in Venezuela. And there's a lot of traditions related to the holiday that are still practiced, but the roller skating specifically from the 1950s.
Speaking of which, what the heck is up with midnight mass?
Midnight mass?
What's the deal with that?
Oh, for Christmas Eve?
Yeah.
Well, it's technically on Christmas Day. It's just the day has gone over, so you're
right.
You go. I don't know exactly where that tradition particularly comes from, but I think it might be for if you want to spend all of Christmas with your family at home. There was the midnight mass option where you could just go at night, go back to sleep, and you could wake up and your entire day was spent with the family. I believe that's what it's for. I might be wrong. It probably depends on your geographical location, too. I'm sure everyone does it a little bit differently.
Right.
But that's my understanding of it. All right. Well, Darian, you got yours coming up next?
Yeah.
After I've explained midnight mass to you?
Thank you for that, by the way.
No problem.
I've heard about it a lot. I've just never really given it much thought. But I feel like it's an interesting time to have mass.
It is. It's very interesting to see it because you can go. They're public. People can walk in and see it if you're at all curious, whether you're religious or not. It's neat to go. But it's interesting because again, at night, a lot of churches are lit up by candles on the inside, but all the stained glass windows will be dark. And usually, when you go to church or you're inside of a church during the day, the light from the sun is lighting up the whole church. It does a very colorful. But what you're getting is all of the color has been added with the wreaths and the banners and the candles, whereas the actual windows are black. So they act kind of like a very dark, almost sort of a dark highlight. I guess like the opposite of a highlight inside your church. That's pretty interesting. So there we go. That's Midnight Mass for you, and I've explained Venezuelan Christmas. Darian, I believe your next stop is Japan here?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go all the way to the other side of the world. And
Glorious Nippon.
Yes. To talk about a somewhat peculiar Christmas tradition in Japan.
What tradition in Japan isn't peculiar? And
right,
that's not me saying that as just an outsider perspective. I'm pretty sure even the Japanese totally own it, and I think they love it. They love how weird they are.
Yes. I feel like that describes a lot of Japanese culture, but talking about Christmas traditions in Japan is a little peculiar because Japan is approximately 1.5% Christian, so they are very much a non-Christian nation.
That's actually higher than what I thought they were. I didn't even know they had 1.5. I thought it was sub 1%.
It depends on the sources that you look at. Most of the ones I saw hovered around 1.4, 1.5%. One or two said that they were below 1. But I couldn't necessarily get the dates for all those, so it depends. But yeah, Japan is very much a Christian minority nation, though interestingly enough, Christianity is the third most popular religion in Japan after Shintoism and Buddhism, which are both at 70%. And if you do the math on that, it's more than 100% because many people in Japan identify as both Buddhist and Shinto.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, how are they both at 70? There's a syncretism going on.
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And Christianity comes in third at 1.5. So pretty small minority, large minority, however you say that. But yeah. So when you think of your Christmas traditions, specifically around food, what sorts of foods do you tend to enjoy around Christmas?
Ooh, you probably, well, for me, and this is a total errant thing, I always got to get those Oreos with the red frosting inside of them. Those are delicious.
Because they do taste different.
They do. They're better. Objectively speaking, they are better. I will take that to my grave. I also like candy canes. I love all the Christmas candy. Sometimes I get some Christmas turkey.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some, Christmas chicken even in my time, potatoes. Depends on what family gathering I'm going to and what family I'm spending time with, because if it's either my mom's or my dad's, it might be a little different. But that's generally what I have.
So you mentioned Christmas chicken. Is
Yes.
that usually like a roast chicken or?
Yeah, something like that. It's not like breaded. I mean, I think maybe once it was or something like that, but it's typically like an actual like roasted or, just like cooked chicken sort of thing.
The Japanese also enjoy chicken on Christmas, but they take it to like the next level. They sort of take it to the extreme.
Oh boy,
they specifically enjoy KFC.
They're deep frying on Christmas.
On Christmas.
Okay,
and I don't mean that they enjoy fried chicken on Christmas. I mean they eat KFC on Christmas.
So specifically KFC chicken is what
Yes.
they do. Okay, tell me more. I'm intrigued.
So surprisingly enough, KFC is extremely popular in Japan.
Okay.
And a lot of my portion of this podcast is actually going to be explaining why KFC is so popular, or how KFC came to Japan, because that story in and of itself is very interesting. But I do also want to talk about like how Japanese people enjoy KFC on
How
Christmas.
the Colonel saved Christmas.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So, just to give you a quick idea of how popular KFC is in Japan around Christmas, approximately 3.6 million people buy KFC on Christmas Day, and between the 20th and the 25th, KFC Japan makes approximately 64 billion US dollars.
64 billion?
Yes.
Oh man, that's a lot of chicken there, man.
That's a lot of chicken.
I'm assuming also that before there's probably a big run up to get KFC as well. I'd assume like Christmas Eve and probably the week before is pretty decent sales wise.
Yes. By the 23rd, there are typically lines outside of the door of most KFCs.
So there's just a chicken craze.
Yes.
And it's like dang, okay.
And that 3.6 million number is up by approximately 10 times from the average day for KFC in Japan, which is still significant. But yeah, KFC and Christmas in Japan are definitely synonymous, and Colonel Sanders is basically Japanese Santa. You're way more likely to see like statues of Colonel Sanders or like Colonel Sanders Christmas decorations in Japan than you are Santa.
Okay, so for everyone who, because no one else can see this, right? I was desperately trying not to laugh in the microphone to let Darian go there. That was really funny. Go on, please. I want to hear more.
And Japanese people typically won't just eat fried chicken. They will buy what KFC Japan calls party buckets.
Okay, what's a party bucket? What's in a party bucket?
Or sorry, not party bucket, party barrel.
Oh, it's even better.
It's even better, yeah.
Party. I want a party barrel. What's in this?
It's essentially like a box. It's like a compartmentalized like bucket or box that has your a holder for chicken, but it also has like mashed potatoes, coleslaw, even cake. Cake is really popular.
Okay.
In KFC in Japan. But yeah, it's very common for Japanese families to get together at the table on Christmas and enjoy these party barrels from KFC, which are usually brightly colored and decorated for Christmas.
Okay, so this just reminded me of something that I used to do a little bit for Christmas that I haven't thought of in a long time. Do you know like those specialty popcorn tins you can buy?
Yeah.
Where they're like separated into different like styles of popcorn? Mm-hmm. Is it kind of like that a little bit?
A little bit, but it's obviously
much bigger
and not as many like compartments.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean these barrels are big enough to like feed a family of 4.
Okay, interesting. So they just take that concept, they supersize it and make it they Kentucky fry it.
Yes.
That gives me that's my cultural link to this concept here, because back in the day we used to get like a big, if you haven't seen these, it's usually like a big popcorn tin. It has like a design or something like that on the outside, like a wilderness scene or something, depends on what style and what company you're buying from, but it'll have like chocolate covered popcorn, caramel popcorn, regular popcorn, kettle corn, something else. It's that sort of thing. You just buy in a tin. And that's what this reminded me of. And I haven't thought about those things in years. So I thank you for dislodging that from my memory, because I think I need to bring that tradition back. So that, if nothing, I've at least remembered.
Or you can get KFC.
I can get both.
Or you could get both.
I can go to Japan and bring my popcorn. That's going to be the next hit trend in Japan when I go over. I'm going to bring my popcorn tins there. We're going to get a party barrel of chicken. We're going to party up in Nippon. Even the Emperor's going to love it. It's going to be great. Me and Godzilla out here, baby. All right, so continue. So they get a big party barrel that feeds a family. And what else do they do? Or they just get a ton of food?
Yeah. I mean, they get a ton of food, and the meal is essentially their Christmas celebration, because again, Christmas is technically a holiday in Japan. I mean, people treat it as a holiday, but it's more like how we in America treat Valentine's Day. And actually, before KFC came in, Christmas was sort of celebrated like we celebrate Valentine's Day in the U.S. Basically, partners would get together and they'd have dinner together, and that was about it. But now with KFC, it's more of a there's more of a family focus, just like Christmas here in the U.S.
Okay, that's interesting.
Just obviously without the religious celebration, and without a lot of the other more secular traditions that we have here.
Okay, that's interesting, because I know Japan has they've had kind of a weird flirtation of Christianity for a long time that goes back deep in their history. I'd love to talk about that more, like all the different samurai that converted and stuff like that. But they get married, I believe, typically in like Christian style ceremonies, and that's something that's been held in their culture for a long time now, despite the fact that a lot of the population isn't Christian. So it's weird how that stuff kind of gets merged into their existing culture, but it's still done in a very Japanese style.
Yeah, the Christian influence, specifically in the European influence more broadly on Japan, is really interesting. And I think KFC is a good example of the more Western influences in Japanese culture. And what's really interesting about this is that KFC in Japan and Japanese Christmas celebrations are very much intertwined. It's not like KFC came to Japan and, actually, I suppose it is like that. KFC came to Japan and people started adopting it as their Christmas traditions, but it's sort of like those traditions go hand in hand. Like KFC didn't become popular in Japan before the Christmas traditions. KFC became popular in Japan because people started adopting it as their de facto Christmas tradition.
And exactly what made it related to Christmas? Like what's the inroad there?
So that's where the story of KFC in Japan gets interesting.
All right, let's hear it.
So after World War II, there was about a decade and a half to 2 decades where Japan wasn't doing very good economically because of the different austerity measures and economic policies that were implemented either willingly by the Japanese government.
And they did have to clean up after a gigantic war they kind of lost. There was a lot that hit the country at once.
Yeah. Japan was sort of responsible for a lot of things that sort of had to own up to.
Well, anyways, moving on from that.
Yeah. But towards like the late 60s, early 70s, Japan hit an economic boom. And when I say boom, I mean boom. Japan was like considered to be like the next up-and-coming economic powerhouse in the world.
In fact, I know a little bit about this that I'll slot in here just to give people a little more context. So Japan actually, I believe in the 80s, when we hit that decade, it was the second biggest economy in the world. Japan was kind of how a lot of people view China now, where everyone thought it was going to be the next global hegemon. And then they hit the wall, essentially, and I think they're the 8th biggest economy now, but they never got to that same level, which is interesting because if you're talking about China's starting to kind of go that way too. But Japan, for a long time, was seen as like, that's going to be the big thing. So if you watch a lot of like sci-fi movies or read a lot of sci-fi from specifically the 70s and 80s, and they're trying to predict what the future on Earth is going to look like, that's the reason why a lot of it is Japanese influenced. It's because that, at the time, was how people thought the future was going to be. So you watch, like, Blade Runner, for example, and you see how, I believe is it San Francisco in that movie? I think it is? Or is it L.A.? I can never remember which city it is. One of the Californian cities. But you see how it's very inspired by what was then the East Asian skyline, where there's a lot of the video screens and all that, which is now what like a lot of modern cities look like now. Well, that had started in East Asia at the time. And that's why a lot of that movie has such a deep Japanese influence kind of in the background, is because that's what they thought the future was going to be. So, little fun fact for you all there.
Yeah.
Anyways, getting back to KFC specifically riding the Japanese economic gravy train.
No, pun intended.
Oh, yeah, so very, very.
No, that's important because it's at this time, once Japan's economy really started picking up, people started like the average Japanese people started having money to buy things. Like,
Yeah. You can go out and have a party.
Yeah. And at the time, after World War II, the U.S. was the dominant cultural powerhouse.
Especially in Japan, because we had kind of occupied them, and we left that legacy.
Especially in Japan. So American culture was very much at the forefront of this burgeoning Japanese middle classes like life and consciousness. So they started importing a whole bunch of American products, American music, restaurants, companies, that sort of thing. America was basically infiltrating Japan, for lack of a better word. And one of the companies that carried over to Japan was KFC, which at the time was just called Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think it's officially called KFC now.
Yeah, it's been changed.
And the first store, or the first KFC restaurant in Japan was managed by a man by the name of Takeshi Okawara. He's a really interesting guy. He is basically the sole individual credited with making KFC popular in Japan.
What a legacy to leave behind.
But exactly how he did it is sort of...
They like don't know exactly how he did it?
So there's KFC Japan's official stance.
So there's the corporate narrative.
There's the corporate narrative, which is basically the same as Okawara's narrative. I actually don't know if he's still alive or not, but he denies this happening, but there was supposedly an interview that he gave in, I think, the late 70s, where he said some pretty interesting things about how he made KFC popular, but we'll get to that. He denies that, but a lot of people sort of accept that's at least the more interesting theory. But yeah, let's backtrack a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. So 70s, Okawara opens or manages the first KFC in Japan, and it really doesn't do very well. He actually was living in the restaurant because he couldn't afford to like pay rent for an apartment or anything.
So he's a man down on his luck.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. But one day around Christmas, he is asked to cater a kindergarten Christmas party. So he brings chicken to these kindergartners, and he was specifically asked to dress as Santa Claus.
Oh,
because the people in charge of the kindergartners thought that would be fun for the kids.
Yeah, it'd be cute.
Yeah.
Santa chicken, you know.
And it was a massive hit.
Smash hit with the kids.
Yep. The kids love the chicken. The kids love Santa. And that event gave Okawara the idea that, if these kids really like, this American food and this American like icon, that perhaps everyone else in Japan would like it too. And so, according to the more popular yet unofficial narrative, this event gave him the idea to essentially lie to the Japanese people and say that KFC is in American Christmas tradition, and that if you want to celebrate Christmas like the Americans do, you should eat KFC, which is kind of funny because it's not only not true. If you ask like most Americans what they would think about eating KFC on Christmas, most people probably call it trashy.
Yeah, that would be a very sort of unpopular and also very like, you look like you're kind of like on the bottom of the social ladder then if you're getting KFC on Christmas, or you're desperate. It's not a good look.
But allegedly, according to Okawara, that's what he was telling the Japanese people, is that Americans love KFC on Christmas, and it's like their go-to tradition. Marketing it that way, and also playing a series of commercials to my old Kentucky home.
They actually did that?
Yes.
What? That's amazing. I need to find those commercials.
Which, as I'm sure most of you know, isn't a Christmas song at all.
Nope, but it sure is a Kentucky song.
It's definitely a Kentucky song.
That's what matters.
Yeah, he had some really good advertising and marketing. And
sounds like it.
That's what really kicked off the success of KFC in Japan, especially as a Christmas tradition. Though sometime later, Okawara as I said earlier, he gave an interview to a Japanese radio program saying that this is what he did, but unfortunately, there's no known copy or recording of that interview, and he denies it, and KFC Japan denies that he said any of that. So
it's impossible to prove.
So it's impossible to prove, and I didn't get too deep into the controversy around that. I'm just gonna sort of leave it up to whoever's listening to make
Viewer
their own.
interpretation.
Yeah, I prefer the more fun interpretation, even if it's not provably true. But what Okawara claims was the determining factor in the success of KFC was homesick or Americans in Japan who were getting homesick and wanted some semblance of American food on Christmas and didn't necessarily want turkey. So chicken was a decent substitute for that. And it's a very very much an American food.
Yeah,
but it wasn't just good marketing and good advertising. This basically overnight success of KFC didn't really happen in a vacuum either. One other determining factor was that Japan has a very food-centric culture. Food is very important to basically all forms of Japanese celebrations. Like if a Japanese person invites you to a house party, that's basically the equivalent of inviting you to a dinner party.
Interesting.
You're going to go there and eat, and you are going to be sharing food with other people. So it's not like in the United States where like each person has their own plate and you'll like get up from the table, get whatever food you want, take it back, and basically just pick and choose whatever you want. In Japan, there's much more of a communal sort of culture around eating where all the food is presented out on the table and everyone just basically takes what they want, but it's all shared.
Everyone's eating together.
Yeah,
it's a big old get together sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically there was already enough of like a cultural framework around which Okawara was able to sort of like mold what now is like the standard Christmas tradition in Japan.
Interesting. So he took advantage of something in Japanese culture and was able to adapt it so that it served his benefit and also brought this new tradition into the country.
Right. And I guess I don't know to what extent he specifically capitalized on this and to what extent
he was just like lucky.
Yeah, he got lucky. Japanese people, saw that KFC was good and they already have this culture and sort of just like molded it themselves. I wasn't really able to determine how much he was like the sole architect of the specific tradition, but he was very much singularly responsible for making KFC a success in Japan and making it popular.
That's, again, one heck of a legacy. Yeah. And, if I ever happen to be in Japan during Christmas, I got to try it. I got to know what KFC Christmas chicken is like. You can just instantly get curious when you hear that. Because, again, here in the United States, your KFC quality varies wildly. There's some that are pretty good. There's some that are just, the junkiest, garbage you'll ever eat. But, man, if it's a big thing in Japan, if it's good, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I got to try it. That just sounds so fascinating.
Yeah, if you're ever in Japan, you have to
let us know how it is.
We basically ask anyone off the street about, I'm going to butcher this, Kurisamasu Niwa Kentucky, or Kentucky for Christmas. That's what they collectively refer to.
It's Kentucky for Christmas, baby.
The tradition, yeah.
Kentucky is slowly capturing the entire world, one step at a time. It's all part of their plan.
Slowly but surely.
The Kentucky Colonels will rise up. Well, that's really fascinating. Is there anything else for that, or have we hit all the bases here?
I think we summed it up pretty well.
Okay, good. Well, I guess that brings us to our next segment here, which
Another
is
island nation.
Yes. So, the cute, adorable little country of Iceland, which has a very interesting connection to North Dakota, where we are, because we have the largest Icelandic population in the world of anywhere that's not called Iceland, basically.
We also have Icelandic State Park.
Yes, we do. There is so when it comes to places that have a lot of Icelanders, there is Iceland and there is North Dakota, and that's pretty much it. So,
yep.
I think there's some up in like the actual Scandinavian countries, but it's not very big. Also, North Dakota has a larger population than Iceland.
Yeah.
Because Iceland has roughly 300,000, maybe a little bit more, and we have about 700,000.
Do you know how they compare, like area-wise?
I think they're roughly equal, but I'm not exactly sure. Can't say I looked it up at all, but I think
Iceland might be a little bit smaller.
It might be. Yeah, I think it actually is just a tiny bit, but it's roughly close.
But it's very sparsely populated.
Yes.
Minimal population density.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, Iceland, right? It's a country that has a lot of very cute traditions, which I'm going to share with you right now, and a lot of dark, creepy things about it. But we're going to talk about those maybe some other day. We're going to talk about the cute things that make me really love Iceland.
Just a tangent, the history of Iceland is actually really interesting too.
Oh, it is.
The founding of, or not the founding, but the settlement of Iceland is really interesting.
Yes. In fact, maybe we'll go back to Iceland on another episode, come to think of it, because that's not a bad idea. But anyways, did you know, Darian? I'll start with some fun fact, or at least one specific fun fact, and I'm going to go into the traditions here.
Okay.
Totally revealing my segue to you and the entire audience here. So, did you know that Iceland is one of the most literate countries in the world?
I didn't know that, actually.
Yes. It also, Icelanders are notorious bookworms because they love to read. In fact, 1 in 10 Icelandic people, at least native Icelanders, it will publish a book in their lifetime. 1 in 10.
That's really amazing.
Yes. And on average, at least in 2019, the average number of books read a month was 2.3 nationally, which has possibly gone up due to COVID. I didn't find any newer statistics, but if people have, I don't know what their response to COVID was, if people just had to stay indoors and all that, but if that's all they had to do was read, well, that number is probably up much more now. So they love reading.
I'm sure like March in Iceland, people are probably pretty much staying indoors anyways.
Yes, and that brings me to the wonderful Christmas tradition of Jólabókaflót, which is the Icelandic word for book flood, if I can pronounce it right. So again, Jólabókaflót. I'm hoping, I'm looking at the pronunciation thing I have right in front of me, and I'm hopefully getting it right. I apologize if there's any angry Icelandic people. Most of you know English, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, by the way.
Yeah, Icelandic is actually one of my favorite languages. I wish I could learn it at some point.
We'll just go to Iceland. I'm sure they'd love to teach you.
Yeah, it's supposedly the closest living language to Old English. Like it's not essentially unchanged, but it's minimally changed from Old English, the Anglo-Saxon, and it's also considered to be one of the hardest languages to learn.
Fascinating. Well, that actually does relate to our story for today, because Jólabókaflót, again otherwise known as book flood, is partially popular because it is helpful in preserving the Icelandic language, because reading is a good way to learn. I might be asking, Aaron, what the heck is Jólabókaflót? What does the book flood even mean? Do a bunch of books break the levee and swarm the whole country?
It sounds like a terrifying tradition.
You're close. It's actually nowhere near as scary as you think. So it started specifically in 1944 is where the modern tradition of Jólabókaflót is related to. And that was, of course, during World War II, which actually America occupied Iceland during that time. That's something a lot of people don't know about, is that there was an American occupation of Iceland, which sounds bad, but it was more of Iceland needed protection, and it was kind of part of... Well, it was connected to Norway because it had the same monarch and everything there. And let's say Norway didn't really last too long in World War II, so someone had to protect it. So it was more of a, you are being protected, please do not resist sort of thing that we did, which again sounds bad, but no one complains.
It doesn't sound better.
Yeah, no one complains. Let's just say that we just kind of showed up, said, you're under our protection, okay, bye. And then it really seems like there was not a whole lot of issues. If I'm wrong, Icelanders, you can tell me, but from my American sources, no one had an issue with this. Anyways, so during World War II, many things are rationed, right? Especially on a small island nation. And also, another interesting thing is that Iceland at the time could not sustain a year-round publishing industry. So 2 things happened. 1, books were not rationed because paper wasn't rationed. So books were one of the best Christmas gifts you could give because it was one of the few things you could actually get. Also, publishers flooded the markets at the end of the year during that time. So this started a tradition where every year people buy a ton of books for each other at Christmas, and they get together as a family and they all sit around reading. Which is just adorable. And typically this is done as a very like wholesome family tradition. A lot of people drink hot chocolate, or they have their juice of some kind, or there's something which hopefully I'm pronouncing this one right. It's always specifically called a non-alcoholic ale. It's Jóhablond, which is basically some sort of orange pop or soda mixed with a non-alcoholic like either whiskey or ale itself, and then possibly mixed with Coke, though it doesn't have to be, and you drink that, and apparently it's very yummy, and they love to do that. It's always specifically referred to as non-alcoholic. I'm sure there is an alcoholic version just because it's mixed with
ale and whiskey. Non-alcoholic whiskey?
I don't know. All I've heard is that in a recipe where it recommended Guinness as a good thing to throw in there. I don't know if it's non-alcoholic per se for that recipe, but it's the only one I found that actually had a specific recipe. But every other source I saw said it's non-alcoholic, so that, again... Icelanders, please fill me in if you know.
Guinness is definitely not.
I know, exactly. So that's how I'm assuming there is an alcoholic version, but the non-alcoholic must be more popular. So basically, there's just a big tradition of reading in Iceland, obviously. And then Christmas time is where people get a lot of new books and everyone gets together. And there's a thing called oh gosh, I hope I can get this one right. It's called the Book Bulletin in English. And in Icelandic, it is Bókatindi, I believe. It's been sent out every year since 1944. And it's basically, it looks like one of those kind of scholastic book fair. If you ever had one of those back in the day, if you're from our generation, you know. It's kind of like a scholastic book fair catalog or flyer. It's got this, please look it up. The 2019 version has this really cute image of a family all reading together in a nice little Christmas, their like Christmas living room. Super adorable. It's so cute. And they all get together and you can pick out your books, and that's sent out in late fall or probably even early fall because there's going to be a large demand. And then you wait for your books and you give those out as gifts on Christmas. You all sit around and read.
Huh.
It's really cute. And that's pretty much the whole thing. It's not super detailed, but it's been used as a way to, again, keep Icelandic as a language alive because a lot of the books are translated into Icelandic. So you get an English or an Icelandic version of a lot of the books that are available. Also other languages. So it's a good way to teach people how to read. And there's also been a study showing that the biggest readers in Iceland are women and families with children. So there's a lot of people who read to their kids, which is just so darn cute, and I love it. It's so great. They are the biggest readers in all of Iceland. So this is a perfect family tradition if you want to go to Iceland. Or, I don't know, maybe you could just like order a catalog. I mean, there's enough Icelanders here in North Dakota. Can we like get a few? Because I want that in my mailbox.
We should bring that here.
Can I have some? That just sounds really fun. And it just seems to be all physical books. People love reading there. So that's one of their adorable traditions. Now I have another adorable Icelandic tradition. This is the one that this is our big finale because Jólabókaflót is awesome, but there's a possibly even, depending on who you are, even better Icelandic Christmas tradition.
It has something to do with the sheep, right?
No, not well. Actually, it does, but in a there's like a degree of separation there because it does involve clothing, which comes from wool, which does relate to sheep. So you're close.
I remember you telling me something about a sheep. I think.
Oh, it wasn't no sheep. It was the greatest thing ever invented for any sort of Christmas tradition ever. Darian, I give you come on, baby, let's do it. Jólakaturinn. The Christmas cat of Iceland, otherwise known as the Yule cat.
Maybe that's what you were telling me.
Yep, it's so great. So Darian, let me tell you a little bit about this. So the Jólakaturinn, I'm going to call him the Yule cat from now on because that's a little bit easier, and I do not want to butcher the Icelandic language. Hopefully, I am not. I apologize to any Icelanders listening. Again, send me your reviews of my pronunciations if you'd be so kind. So. The Jólakaturinn is, I'm slipping back and forth between the two. Whatever. It's a tradition where, in Iceland back in the day, it probably came from, we can confirm it in writing in the 1800s, right? But it possibly goes back in folklore into the medieval period. So wool production and shepherding has been a very large part of Icelandic culture for a long time, a big part of their economy.
Right.
I think it still is in some ways, though, of course, it's modernized now. But I believe wool production is still a decent part of their econ. Now, what happens is a lot of people, especially back in the day, and I believe just in Europe in general, gave clothing as Christmas gifts because that's about all people had. So you got a nice Christmas gift. That's probably part of the origin of the ugly Christmas sweater, by the way. That's just a wild guess there. But you give gifts out at Christmas time, right? And the thing is, you have to meet the deadline of Christmas, right? So what do you do when the whole family usually works in this sort of process, right? Back in the olden times.
Right.
So someone like farmhands and the family all work together to get the clothes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do to make people work faster to kind of, give a little spook, a little Christmas fun there to make sure that they actually get all of their work done?
Bring cute, fluffy animals into the workplace?
You're very close because it's supposed to be the opposite thing. You bring horrifying animals that will eat you if you don't get new clothes. Because that's what the Yule cat does. It eats people that don't get new clothes for Christmas. That is actually what it does. I'm not making that up. It is a whole tradition based around if you have new clothes on Christmas, you don't get eaten by the monster cat. And if you don't get new clothes on Christmas, you're going to get eaten by the monster cat. So if you're a naughty child and you don't get Christmas gifts, or if you don't work hard enough to get everyone's Christmas gifts out, well, then Grandpa's going to get eaten by the Yule cat there, little Olaf. So you better work a little harder. And I'm sure this was all done in a very teasing manner and probably not that serious, I would assume, back in the day. It's kind of hard to tell with these folk traditions. You never know.
I don't know.
Some are deathly serious. Some are definitely more like, okay, they were memeing.
Well, there was the one that I thought about bringing up on the podcast, which is Krampus in Austria, which was definitely serious and
for sure.
Not playful at all.
No, it's become playful over the years, though. The Yule Cat is kind of, always seems like it's been slightly playful. It's sort of like Icelandic Krampus, but definitely has a much more tongue-in-cheek, though there are images, like the more true to the legend images are kind of like, it almost looks a little bit like a werewolf, but it's more feline. It's not quite like bipedal. It's just like a very big kind of like saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah, you always want the Disney versions of those fairy tales.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that there's also a lot of even older art that depicts it kind of like just a giant house cat. And certainly modern artists have ran with this, because if you look up the Yule Cat, you're almost going to get a very big, probably grumpy looking house cat that might be wearing a funny hat, depending on what artist, hopefully. And usually it's peering into your windows, because that's what it would do. It would be checking if people got their Christmas gifts or not. It would be a giant cat eye looking through your window. And that's the story of the Yule Cat. He was basically just invented as this sort of goofy way of getting people to make sure they got their wool production done, and took on a life of its own. It's even been related to other Icelandic legends. Like over the years, there's like a sort of troll, like witch figure in Icelandic lore called Grilla, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. And she's related to these characters called the Yule Lads, who she supposedly birthed. It's like 13 kind of like Christmas troll sort of things, and there's different interpretations of them too. And the Yule Cats was later added on as like their pet, though apparently it started as like its own separate thing. So it's shifted throughout the years, but for the most part, all you really need to know is that the cat was supposed to start off as definitely a little more sinister. It definitely like ate people if they didn't wear clothes. Now you might get it where if you're a good kid, the cat might leave you clothes, but if you're a naughty kid, you don't get any, and he might eat you depending on his mood. So that's for the most part what the story of the Yule Cat is. I know it's not like a super deep dive into the lore here, but looking at it, it was pretty straightforward. It's like, make the clothes, kid. And you don't want the cat to eat you, do you? So that's the story. I knew Emmy. If you've heard any meowing in the background, that's Darian's Yule Cat back there, Emmy. She's appeared in a few episodes before. I don't know if she's going to eat us if we don't get clothes for Christmas, but
she might.
Yeah, I've also heard, kind of jokingly, though I'd like to imagine that it's partially true, that this might also be a way to get kids to appreciate clothing on Christmas if you get it to them as a gift. Because, like, well, you're not getting eaten by the Yule Cat. Oh, thank you, Papa. I'm so happy now. And, then the little kid doesn't, complain and whine when you give him a new jacket instead of, the toy he wants.
Switch. Yeah,
exactly, right? Yeah. Well, you're getting books and a coat now. You better be happy because the Yule Cat's not going to eat you and you get to learn something about your heritage. There you go. If I was an Icelandic dad, that's exactly what I would do, by the way. Living the dream right there. So there you go. If you're a parent in Iceland, you can definitely take that one for us. That's how you should tell your kids about the Yule Cat and make them appreciate Icelandic literature. Keep your culture alive.
That's adorable.
Yeah, it is.
I love those.
It's very cute. So while you're sitting there...
It's kind of terrifying, too.
Well, while you're sitting there drinking your Yola Blonde, your non-alcoholic Yola Blonde, your nice new Christmas clothing, peering outside, making sure the Yule Cat's not breaking down your door, that's Icelandic
Reading
Christmas. Yeah, reading a book. Yeah, and I'm sure the Yule Cat's reading, too. So there you go. That's what I got. Those are my two favorite. I loved Icelandic Christmas traditions were just adorable, and I loved them so much. Again, seriously, look up pictures of the Yule Cat, because you're going to find the older ones, which are these much more sinister, big, kind of hairy cat creature, and then the modern renditions, which is big, grumpy house cat, again, potentially in funny hat, making sure you're wearing clothes, which I appreciate that in many levels. So, yeah, there we are. This is our Christmas episode, folks, and this will be the last one for the year. We're taking a quick break after this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly when we're going to be back, but it'll be sometime in January, I'm assuming.
Yes.
We're going to take a few weeks off. So, again, enjoy your Merry Christmas to all. Enjoy it. Go to Midnight Mass if you want to. Get out there. Let's see, anything else? Do you have any parting words to end this season on, Darian?
Way to put me on the spot like that.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't have a whole lot, but
I don't know. If you've been, I guess this sort of rounds out our first year. I guess we haven't really been doing the show for a full year yet, but this is our first end of year, I suppose.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thank you all. It's been a lot of fun to do this show, and I believe that at least in the second season we had no schedule slips, except we might have put out one on a Saturday, but they all went up at least to
yes,
the day.
I believe there's only one that went out,
which is pretty good for us. We're definitely getting better at that for a no budget production that was basically started on a hey, you want to do a podcast? Sure, going pretty well. So, yeah, I would want to thank you all for listening.
And if you're still listening from our previous podcast, I love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, boy.
And if you don't know about our previous podcast, that's totally fine.
That's for the best.
Let's leave it that way.
Leave it that way.
I don't think you can actually find it anymore.
No, we have the episodes saved, but we'll maybe put those out somewhere in an archive. But Maybe. We'll see. There were a few I liked. There were others where I was like, oh, gosh, what were we doing? Anyways, well, if you don't have anything else to add...
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Enjoy your time. I know it's been a little bit rough again if this whole COVID situation still ongoing and the higher-ups won't let it end, blah, blah, blah. I know, but we can all make it through it. We're all going to make it.
Enjoy your Christmas.
Enjoy Christmas.
Whatever other traditions you
This is your time to de-stress. This is your time to give some gifts. I'm glad that we're going to get this episode on Christmas Eve. So, again, Merry Christmas to you all. Friggin' man up, hit the gym for your January. I know you can do it. Say your prayers, take your vitamins, hit the gym, and listen to the Rolling Stones.
I thought you were going to say hit that subscribe button.
Well, I would never shill for that.
Yeah, that's why I was, I was a little shocked. Is this a Christmas miracle?
If people like it, they're going to hit it themselves. So here you go. That's Aaron's advice for being a man.
I actually do have a parting thought.
Oh, what do you got?
So if a miracle occurs in June,
Yes.
is that an early Christmas miracle or a late Christmas miracle?
That's well, is it specifically a Christmas flavored miracle or is it just a miracle?
Yes.
Ooh. Oh, well, I think
If
that's early because Christmas in July, which I definitely know God observes. I'm sure.
Okay, so
do you know about that American tradition? That's a good one. Christmas in July, solid.
Oof. There's actually a big tangent.
Oh boy, do we want to go into that or want to save it for later?
There used to be in a very, very small amusement park in north central Minnesota.
Yes.
That my family would go to basically every year because it was next to our lake cabin, which I believe it was called Christmas in July.
Okay.
It was a summer only Christmas themed amusement park.
Was that Santa's Village?
Maybe.
Okay, because I remember one exactly like what you're describing, had mini golf and like a train and everything.
Maybe that's what it was called.
Yeah, it was Santa's
Something
Village.
was called Christmas in July.
Yeah, they had a festival it was at a campground there.
Right.
And there was also Santa's Village next door.
Yeah, it was Santa's Village.
Yup. Look at that. I was there too. Look at that. It's a Christmas miracle. We found that out. We both went to Santa's. It was a great spot.
Basically on time.
Yup. Look at that. Everything's perfect. We did it, folks. Thank you for listening to Side Stories. We'll catch you all next year. Have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you on the flip.
Bye.